Hey, everybody, I'd like to thank you for coming today. We have Jack Roach with us. And I just want, for those of you that were here in the fall and had the opportunity to interact with Jack during his mentorship visit with us and with Fort Collins and those joint practices, I just want you to take a minute to reflect on his message of living in the moment and really think back. We talked a lot about that over the course of this year in different situations, as things were going well, as things were hard. And we kind of used it as a cornerstone talking point for this year. So I'd really like you to maybe just take a minute, reflect on that, and then Jack, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. Sean, thanks for asking me to come on. And for those that I did see when I was there, it's good to see you all again. And I've got a lot of pictures popping up and some not. So I'm going to have, being the age I am, I'll have a little bit of trouble kind of following this. But is Allison on yet?
Yeah, I'm on.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I heard you somewhat prompted this. Is that true?
I prompted this?
Yes.
Yeah, Allison, you're the one that made the first suggestion and be like, let's reach out to Jack.
Oh my, yeah, you're right. I kind of forgot about that. But yes, I'm glad to have you.
Well, thank you. What prompted you to prompt this?
I think we were talking about strokes and having guests and yeah.
A little bit of staying in the moment, right?
Yeah, of course.
And raise your hand if you were a part of the talk that I gave on my experience with Aaron Peirsol in Rome. Okay, so a lot of you are there. How about someone giving me your takeaway from that talk? Anybody? Just a quick takeaway.
Feel free to, folks, unmute. We'll be okay. Really, don't, I mean, since we've talked about that much. Chase, you're up.
Wait, what? I
Were
just
you paying
have to
attention?
go. Yeah,
Jack
I was.
asked for a takeaway. You
I
just
know,
popped
I'm trying
in.
to think of one.
Well, maybe I can help a little bit. I believe this. I believe that all of the great athletes that I ever witnessed in the sport have the capability of staying in the moment. And I don't believe anything special happens in your life without being in that moment. That's when magic occurs, not just in sport, but certainly in sport. And when I told the story of my experience with Aaron, I wish that he could be here to talk about it a little bit because he does such a great job of articulating it. And, oh, wait a minute.
Jack, can I get you something? Hey,
This is Aaron.
Hi. Oh, hey, everybody. How's it going?
What a great opportunity. He happens to be at my house.
Look at that. Oh, my goodness.
Welcome.
Hi, you guys. What's going on? Jack told me what you guys were going to talk about today, so I thought I'd scoot on over.
So about, I don't know, March 6th, Aaron and I got together to, he was working the East Coast. He's living, I'll let him explain where he's living right now. Let's start with that.
Yeah, well, hi, everybody. I'm Aaron, for those of you who guys don't know me or who don't recognize me with all my hair. I've been living in Costa Rica now for a number of years and was cruising up through the East Coast and paying a quick visit to Jack and going to continue on my trip. And then this whole quarantine happened. And so Jack and I kind of made a conscious decision to ride it out together. Not really kind of having fully understood that this might go on for an indeterminate amount of time, but both of us could kind of warrant that, as it were. So we just rolled the dice and have been making up stuff along the way, been doing plenty well. That being said, kind of a unique chance for us to be able to spend the kind of time we're spending together. Probably wouldn't have happened otherwise. To be honest, we were probably both looking for an excuse to do it. So, hi. And whatever, I'm going to join you guys, even if it's just to listen. But, I can pitch in here and there. So.
Super. Yeah, this is pretty exciting, right? I had mentioned to Sean that he was here and asked him not to tell anyone. You didn't tell anyone, right, Sean?
The staff knew, but that's it. We didn't tell the kids. We saved it for the moment.
And I like Aaron and I've done a few of these talks together now, and they revolve about, they originally started with a conversation that Aaron and I had early March when the pandemic first started, and it looked like things were going to close up. And Ryan Murphy had reached out to me for a reason, and it was to talk about what his struggles might be at the time. And the struggles flipped so quickly from being a struggle to being a mission for Ryan. Ryan felt like that, this was much bigger than him, and he had many other things that he needed to do in order to reach out to others and help them. And I guess, one of the questions that I would have for you all at this point is, how many people feel like that they're involved in helping other people through this process? Raise your hand. Okay, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And probably most of that looks like family members, right? How many people feel like they're really helping their family members? They become your community at this point because you're staying with them, you're living with them, right? How many of you have seen teammates during this time? Okay, a few of you. How many of you are like, I think when I was with you all, one of the things we talked about were there are only 3 things that we can train: our body, our minds, and our craft. How many people, like, raise your hand if you feel like you've been training your body as much as you possibly can? How about your mind? And the craft, how many people are working on the sport? I know with Sean and Austin and the other coaches that I met, you guys are probably doing a lot of work on technique, right? Sean, what does that look like?
We've been doing a Wednesday series for about a month that I spend probably 2 to 3 days building a presentation that looks a lot like what you would have seen from Russell. And we are getting close to the end of the line. Aaron, I think we've got one of your former teammates, Tommy Hannon's going to come in for the butterfly talk. Tommy's a pretty good friend of mine. And then we'll see. I'm not going to spill all the beans, but there you go. Spoiler alert. Tommy's probably going to be with us for butterfly. So we're just doing everything we can, Jack, to not only try to present technical information and but also give them a history of the sport. I mean, when we're talking about just on butterfly, we're going to start with like Mary T's 200 fly, and then we're going to progress through the sport. We've done it with all the strokes that we've done. Aaron was a part of it last week's presentation. Just really talking about underwater mechanics, but also giving them some perspective on how different strokes have evolved and technically, and who are the main movers.
Cool.
That kind of reminds me of a story that I think is worthy of talking about. And in 2016, Aaron and I spent a lot of time together at the Olympic trials. And after the team was picked, Aaron approached me and he goes, what if I talk to all the backstrokers I know that have gone to the Olympic Games as far back as I can possibly go, and have them write letters to the people that made the Olympic team in backstroke. And maybe I would like you to tell that story.
I almost forgot about that. Okay. I reached out to a lot of the backstrokers in our past. I think all the way back to the 70s, the 1970s, on the men's side. And so I could throw out names, but I'm not sure how many you guys would acknowledge. But I got a response from every single one, including a couple I don't think I was expecting to hear back from. So, but anyway, they wrote letters to the guys on the team.
Jacob
Pebley, Ryan Murphy,
and David Plummer.
And so I had this like stack of letters they sent to me that I sent along. It was a pretty cool little, it brought together a bit of a lineage, and especially for Jacob, Ryan, there's and David, there was an element of like first time kind of thing. And and it was also a historical thing. So not to add any pressure to, this group of guys, but I think we've won almost every 100 backstroke with the exception of like 2 since the mid 70s, and something like that for the 200 backstroke. Like we've won almost every single one since the mid 70s or something. Yeah. So so we were on a streak of like 5 or 6 in a row, and it was being brought up to me. So what I did was I had those guys write to them and just tell them it didn't mean anything. Don't worry about it. Just told, so basically the guys all wrote in and just like, hey, don't worry about what everyone else is saying. Just do your thing. And we don't care if you don't win. Just go have a good time. And well, they won. So.
And to kind of finalize that story, the team goes on about a 3-week training trip before they actually go into the village in Rio to train, to get ready for the games. And they only do it about 5 days before the games start. And we had our first team meeting outside of the Olympic Village, where it was a really beautiful environment in Rio. And I had gotten these letters from Aaron. He overnighted them to me prior to me leaving the States. And after the first team meeting, I asked Jacob and David and Ryan if they could stay after the meeting and meet with me. And when they came over to me, and I had probably 10 to 12 envelopes for each one of them, I handed them the envelopes and told them that I told them the story that Aaron just told you. And they went and they read those letters from all the Olympians who had been to the games before them representing the U.S. And for me, that was one of the most special moments of the Olympic Games. For me personally, and I'm sure that Ryan and David and Jacob would speak about that as well. I think another fun part of that for me was when Ryan Murphy set the world record leading off the 4x100 medley relay. Aaron and I were standing together, and I'll never forget, as soon as and Aaron held the world record at that point. I'll never forget, as soon as Ryan touched the wall and saw the time, I could not say that he was looking at Aaron when he looked at the crowd, because we were with the U.S. team, but I can say that Aaron looked at me and he was so happy for Ryan. And that's what the sport's all about, right? It's like embracing something happening in the present moment that is magical.
That exact swim was how we ended last session.
With
that exact swim is the relay swim of the 100 back.
Cool.
That's pretty neat.
That? Yeah, that was awesome. Fun for me to watch.
Yeah.
Glad I could be there for it.
And NBC had a lot of underwater video of that swim, more than the individual race, because it's a relay. So it's pretty easy to work with.
I bet that is fun. Could I get you to talk about why you swim?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, this is nice for me, and I really enjoyed, especially talking to the generation of swimmers you guys are in now, and partly because, well, I had a long enough career, and what you guys are doing, and not terribly too much has changed. Really, nothing has. The nitty gritty of it's the same. So, okay, why I swam? I mean, just in a short little nutshell. Do you want me to like?
I would expand it.
Okay, so I'll expand on it a little bit. I won't take up too much time with it, but I grew up around the ocean, and I grew up in a culture and a community that really centered itself around the water. And so it was a bit of a second nature thing, and eventually, not even a second nature thing, it was something we actually really wanted to do. Swimming in a pool is kind of just one way to go about, enjoying ourselves with that. And one thing led to another, and it actually ended up, snowballing, and that I liked to swim in the pool, and I was enjoying kind of the process of it, not really sure how to put it into place, but I was young. And, I think, let's see, to be able to, I had one experience in my career. I had one experience, particularly in my career, that nailed it home for me. And it was before I knew Jack, but not much before I knew Jack. And I was 21 years old. I was going to an Olympic Games. I was at an Olympic Games. I was swimming my best event, my best race, and I was a world record holder in the 200 backstroke at the time. So I wanted to win a gold medal in the 200 backstroke, and that was like the one thing I wanted to do. I wanted silver in the Olympics before that, and I had grown up with a pretty good, I think, understanding of why it was I was putting in this much effort and attention into the sport of swimming. But, I was pretty dead set on trying to kind of follow this through, this path towards an Olympic gold medal. It's just kind of like this natural progression within the sport, where it's like junior Olympics, you get up to like junior nationals or regional meets, senior nationals, and you climb that pyramid. And I had climbed it to the point where the next thing for me was that. And so, you can put your head down and just kind of get into that process, which is a wonderful thing. Hold on, you guys. Sorry, something on the computer. And then, so I get to the point where this is actually a possibility. I swim the 200 backstroke, and this was in Athens, Greece. So this was fun in and of itself. And beautiful night. It was like sunny out, end of the day. And for all intents and purposes, I had one of the best swims of my life. And I remember hopping out of the water and walking back towards the media. And from then on, everything kind of changed. I had heard sound behind me, and it was this crowd of 10,000 people that made a different sound than you would like to hear a crowd make. And it was just this big gasping sound of air, 10,000 people sucking the air out of an open air stadium. So I turned around and slowly, actually had a friend of mine who was also in the race had to tap me on the shoulder, because we were all just kind of stood in our places. We heard that sound from the stadium, and we're just like, what's that? Like, we're done. We're walking off the pool deck. Don't bother us anymore, kind of thing. No more, none of that. No surprises, please. And so I turn around and I see my name where it was, and I was all the way down at the bottom of the screen now. I had been disqualified, and you don't plan on that. So it's like, I was the world record holder. I was the best swimmer in the world, at least times wise at the time, in the 200 back. And you figure by the time you get to that point in your career, you figured out enough things to not get disqualified, So I'm going through my head and I'm thinking like, okay, did I pull on the lane line? I don't think I do that in a race, I do that now all the time, but I'm allowed to now. None of you are. And so I've earned that. And, but there was nothing else that like really stuck out. So anyway, I was staring up at the scoreboard and I was just in shock. I was like, mouth was open. I just realized at that particular moment that what I thought was in my control, this thing that I had worked for, was not. And it was coming to me in huge waves. And I staring up at that scoreboard and was just kind of speechless and not even upset, not even mad, not even sad, shocked. And just kind of nodding my head going like, oh, okay, like something I have to learn yet kind of thing. And basically the rest of the night, I remember just this circus. It was just a circus. I speaking to the media and to the other guys in the race and deciding I was removing myself after about 10 plus minutes of it. And I started walking back towards the warm down pool and it was quiet. We have a long walk back to the warm down pool. Only people I see are the U.S. coaches, and they're off to like fight the war to get the medal back. So I have this realization within that 5-minute walk. I get to kind of, process this to some degree, and I don't have to deal with any cameras in my face or anything like that. And it was, to this day, the most powerful, maybe one of the most powerful, like 10, 15 minutes of my life. And in part because, you get to a level to where you've been preparing for, and then it gets turned up on its head or it goes pear-shaped. And then you hope at that moment you are able to kind of fall back on things that can ground you. Like I hope you're able to kind of pull yourself together and keep it together. And, I had always kind of hoped that I was swimming for the right reasons. You tell yourself you are, it's easy to get distracted and that kind of thing with anything you put that much time into. But I was forced to deal with it now, and I had to kind of go through this whole motion of like, wow, would I do this again, knowing I'd get to this point and get disqualified, when if I was 10 years old and, big Aaron came back and told little Aaron like, hey man, all that work is gonna not come to fruition in this certain way. You sure you want to do it? Kind of thing. But it was this unequivocal yes that came to me. And that made me feel good. And what it was the reason I was kind of so adamant about that was it kind of released something from me. And I realized in some regard, I was getting exactly what I came for. It was a weird realization, and I had already gotten what I had come for, and I was getting it, and what that was all of a sudden my entire career came into view, and it was this day-to-day thing. It was like me showing up every day at the pool. You know, would I go do the morning workouts again, knowing this would happen? Would I, all these things start coming in my head, and it became a very clear yes. And it was right then that I realized I'd swim the rest of my life. Easy, done. Like I just looked at it and was like, okay, I'm good. So and the reason was because I was kind of able to understand that I liked this intrinsic part of what I was getting into. I liked the process and the journey and friends and the places it's taken me, and the other 99.9% of what this sport was. You hope you're going to come up with that. It seems like common sense. Like that's the answer you want to give yourself, but you don't want a gold medal taken away to like have to deal with that. That being said, it was like beautifully poetic. And I remember walking back to the U.S. team and seeing them, and by then I'm actually okay. I'm like, this is weird, but I realized this was not my circus. This was theirs, not the U.S. team, but this was like, the whole Olympic movement or gold medal thing, the thing that I thought was so set in stone, wasn't. The only thing that was how I was going to react to it. That was it. And it was like and that was it. I was like the truth. That was like the truth about every other thing, and that within the sport or whatever. And that was this big realization where it was like, why am I swimming? Well, it ain't for a gold medal. Sure as hell better not be for that. And it sure as hell better not be to just win or, to, I don't know, race or do my best or whatever it is. There's a lot of token answers. And the one that just came back to me over and over again, and where I went straight to, is just I dove in the warm-up pool and I put my head underwater and I was like, oh yeah, I like this. Just like being underwater. And I still do. I'm just, we got, and like you guys are just getting really good at it. But the part for me, which I take from that, is that because I loved it, I was able to kind of see it through, and I took a certain kind of ownership over it too, which is very important and something I want to be able to offer you guys as something you need to, should afford yourselves. You're doing this for yourselves and not for anybody else or any of that. And wrapping the story up to some degree, I see this woman in white walking up to me sometime about 20 minutes later, and I didn't know she was. I'd seen her before. She walks over to me and I stand up and she goes, "Hi, Aaron, you don't know me. My name's Carol. I don't really have much time to talk or to explain to you what's going on. I'm sorry about tonight." She's American, obviously, but she's an official. And she goes, "You about 5 minutes, you've been reinstated. Go get your medal." And I remember looking at her going, "What? Really?" And I wasn't like jumping up and down anymore. I wasn't doing any of that. I put on I was like, okay, I guess I got to go and put on my sweats and get it. It was like, what does this mean anymore? It was so bizarre. And so I walk over to the podium. I see the other guys. I realize they were affected. The guy who got second, Marcus, was bumped up to gold for 45 minutes. Think about what he's going through. And the gentleman who got fourth, who's now bumped up to bronze, this isn't just affecting me. So it was this big kind of out of control roller coaster that the four of us decided not to go ride on. We just observed it and watched it. And we're glad we did. And I don't know, to this day, it's my favorite experience. And what it allowed me to understand was, fortunately, I was able to look back on my career and feel good about it. I was also able to kind of assess that, you know, you can get a gold medal, but it's not going to, or some version of it, whatever that is in your life or career, but it's not going to complete you per se, fill some void or whatever that is. That comes outside of all of that kind of stuff. And you think, of course, that again sounds like common sense, but it's about where we're putting our attention in the day to day, you know, and like what our goals actually are, and the extrinsic versus the intrinsic ones, and then also just where we tend to, I don't know, emphasize our priorities. And goodness gracious, that little experience still teaches me lessons to this day. And I'm very, for no other reason, it's a great story. So yeah, at least I know I'll always swim, you guys. And, you know, it's important to stay in touch with that kind of stuff. As you go on throughout your career, you check in. There's so much to that I feel like is very important. And a lot of it is what Jack talks about being present, and about remaining in this particular moment, and understanding that that's all you've got. And that you make sure you maintain a certain sense of what's actually in your control and what's not. And what I mean by that is what you find, what you're going to take from it. You know, this element of sport, what I came to realize, especially from an experience like this, it's just a place for us to kind of test our character. That's it. You know, it's not a matter of if stuff's going to go pear-shaped, it's when. And it's like, are you going to handle it okay? That's the whole reason you guys are doing what you're doing. And the stakes are always the same depending on your age or whatever. If this happened to me in Junior Olympics when I was 10, I would have been devastated. As much so as when I was 21 and at the Olympic Games. Like, it's relative, and it's a character building exercise. They all are. This is too. I'd venture to say, like, this whole experience of everyone not being in the pool the last 2 months, like, it's good for us in certain ways, because there's things you can work on. And so much of what swimming is not the physical part, it's that internal kind of mental part, emotional. I would say about 75-80% of it. Everyone works hard in this sport. You know, most everyone works hard, and especially you get up there. So, you know, so much of it is how we grow as people, and how we behave and act under those circumstances we don't expect.
Every time I hear this story, I may have told you all that story, my view of that story. I did happen to be at those games and watch Aaron through that whole process. And he doesn't talk about certain times during that process. Like, can you imagine getting your dress sweats on to go get a medal, and the chaos around what had just happened? There were already 3 athletes at the medal ceremony, one of which wasn't going to get a medal as Aaron's walking up.
Yeah, it's nothing to glance over either. It's because it was wild. It was wild.
And every time I hear him tell this story, or every time I relate this story to other people, and, you know, Aaron, he will start this by going, why do I swim? Or why do you swim? And during that time, he had the opportunity to reflect on just why he was swimming. And it wasn't about the medal that ultimately ends up in a sock drawer, probably, for most that I talk to.
And a sock in a sock drawer.
Yeah, it's so much deeper and more valuable to that. And I see Aaron in all walks of life. Everything that he does, he lives life very big. He lives it fully. He knows who he is. He knows what his purpose is in this world. And I watch him surf. He embraces surfing like he embraces swimming. I watch him working on building a boat. He embraces building a boat the same way he embraced swimming. And I believe that if you don't have a purpose in life, and that's something that you should be able to explain in maybe 10 sentences, then you're not going to reach your full potential at any age. And everyone on this call, I encourage you to start asking yourself, what's my purpose? And being able to write it down and being able to explain it. If you can do that, life becomes so much more meaningful than it is without a purpose. And give yourself permission for that purpose to change, because you guys are young. Even at my age, my purpose in life has changed. But you really need something to hold on to and anchor yourself to in times like Aaron just talked about. And we all, like Aaron said, in sport, it will go pear-shaped and go south real quick. And
that's kind of the point of sport, really.
Yeah, it is, right?
It's good when things go right. That's easy. Where you guys aren't in sport for the times when things go right. It's actually, you're in the sport, you're in swimming for the times when things go wrong. And you're preparing as best you can for those experiences. Yeah. Those are like the experiences that you end up should be looking for. Because those are your opportunities and chances to grow. I have other stories that are kind of like that. I think it's kind of fun to cap off that little story though with saying why I got my medal back. I found out like 3 months later that so I got my medal back. Yeah, I didn't never ask why I was disqualified, and no one told me ever until a few months. I think it was 3 or 4 months, 5 months later. And someone said that the only reason it was overturned was because it was a French official, and there's 2 official languages in the IOC, or International Olympic Committee. They're French and English. Olympics were started by a Frenchman, and then English is just a world language. And the official who sent in my citation wrote the citation in a 3rd language. Like, I have my Olympic gold medal on technicality. I love that. I think it's fantastic. And I would still say that it's all the more of the reason to put your emphasis of what you value and turn it inward, and make sure you're getting out of it what you can. But well, shoot, that's one story. Jack and I have a few of those.
I always feel like I hear Aaron tell this story and there's nothing left to say. I mean, that's it. That summarizes everything you need to learn about where you're going and what you want to do in sport.
Well, okay, there's those. And then so this is something that we come to realize, but it's important to realize as you guys are going through this now, right? But even so, community, very important. Doing this with each other and you guys building your relationships, you guys will know each other the rest of your lives. Whether you like it or not, you will know each other for the rest of your lives. And
know each other well.
Yeah, really well. You guys are going through an experience that very few people go through with other people in their lives. It's unique. And showing throughout this a certain kind of love and compassion towards each other and towards yourselves. which goes a long way. Actually, it goes all the way. And I say that because to tie it back around, I don't just beat this in this sense, but it kind of is in this extreme sense. It helps prove a point. Like, you know, if you're going to say win a gold medal, and no one's there to shake your hand, is it really going to mean all that much to you? Like, are you really going to be all that fulfilled and satisfied if you walk away and no one's even willing to look at you in the face or shake your hand? Holding yourself with like a bit of integrity and good sportsmanship and grace and carrying yourselves well. And it's like, you guys are putting in a lot of physical work, but that's not why you guys are there. And that's the thing that needs to be remembered. The work comes, it's inevitable by the nature of what you're doing. But you're building something else too. That's much more important.
Hey, Sean.
Yep.
I would really encourage you to get pen to paper with these guys and have them tell you why they swim. And it can't be something like, I like to compete. That doesn't work.
Yeah, the answers that don't count are because it's all I know what to do. It's all I've ever done. It's a lot of common answers like that. And guys, I swam too. Like, I get it, you know. And the fact of the matter is, the reason I know this is a difficult one to answer is because I know there's a lot of people on the national team that I swam with that do not know how to answer that question.
And they aren't happy. No matter what they achieve, they aren't happy. They leave the sport depressed.
You know, you want to be able to take a certain kind of awareness to what you're doing, and the earlier the better. And be honest with yourselves about it. Like, this is a great time because by the time you guys it's time for you guys to get back in the pool. Have you guys been back in the pool at all yet? Like, no?
Very limited. Very limited.
Yeah. So by the time you guys do get back in the pool, it will be this conscious choice. And you guys have had like very long time to reflect. I mean, it's a lot different than it just being like the routine and like the normal day to day, like, yeah, this is what I do. I go to school and I swim. But like, this requires more than that. This requires a certain kind of conscientious awareness, you know, like thoughtfulness. This is your choice, and you need to take ownership of this. And especially if you're going to put this much time into something. And if at all you're questioning whether this is what you want to do, then you need to be open and honest about that. Like, you be open and honest about it. This is not something you put time into if you don't feel like you need to or want to. But it's good to talk about that stuff. And I bring that up because it's because we are such hard workers in this sport. Having that open dialogue is important. Another thing I think is so important within a career, if you guys are going to extend this out, is an element of like this right here is I always considered these forced removals from the sport. Mine were like from injuries, you know, broken this and broken that, or separated this. I always went back from those feeling very grateful for them, understanding that like I actually kind of appreciated the time away. When I went back in, I had a certain focus that I didn't have before, a certain awareness. Like, I wanted to be there. I had an intention. Like, most days I was fresh too, and my teammates weren't. And you guys will be fresh in a way that maybe it's hard to be with season after season after season. And those occasional little snippets away aren't a bad thing in my view. And it's to be respectfully kind of gone about when those happen. But but it's an element of, well, it's like especially with the things we love, we need to take breaks from every once in a while. And in swimming, we're very hardworking, and I want you guys to understand that, like, there's a reason that a lot of athletes, big name athletes, retire like 3 times. They just didn't even know they needed a break. All they needed was a break. They didn't want to retire. They just needed a break. And there's a difference between resting and moving on. And it's good to know the difference between the two. So I actually, that's why I look at this for you guys as like a really good opportunity for some objectivity and some perspective on why you're doing what you're doing. It could make the answer really authentic and good. And now that you've had some distance between you and the pool. So, important question for you guys. Why do you swim? So easy to ask.
So hard to answer.
Yeah.
Have a purpose in life. It should align with why you swim. Without a philosophy, you don't have a purpose. Without a purpose, you don't have a conviction. Without a conviction, your mental framework will collapse. Your mental framework will collapse under pressure. If you can spit a philosophy out, you can put that framework back together so quickly.
Aaron, I can't, this is like magic listening to this, because I really remember that moment when that happened. It was the night before I got married. I was in New Orleans, and my father-in-law was taping all of the stuff, because I was like at a bar in the French Quarter. But I was watching the races, but I was watching them in New Orleans, not in a place where I would have great recollection of it. Anyway, we came home that night, and my father-in-law is the coolest guy. I mean, I love him dearly. And he goes, man, this Peirsol guy, his reaction to this situation in the moment was so different than what everybody else reacts. He had this, like, he's not a swimmer. He married into his daughter married into a swim family. But he was so taken aback by how calm you were in like the whatever immediate after post race thing, and talked about it just like, and he started watching swimming only because of the way you personally reacted. And then he also married a swim coach, or his daughter married a swim coach, but it was one of those things where it was like really profound to someone that was not locked into the sport of swimming and only like a casual observer of the Olympics. Wow. Watching you and the way that you reacted in the moment impacted him. I mean, he still talks about it as like his favorite Olympic moment, which I don't know if you could imagine reaching that far out to other people. I mean, obviously you broadcast all over the world, but anyway, I just thought that I had to share that, because it was one of the only questions I wanted to ask about. I had no idea that that's what you were going to talk about.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. I that's really interesting. I actually find that a lot of people don't remember that, until I bring it up, probably because I got the medal back, but that's really great to hear for me. And I guess to pivot off of that too, there are certain athletes that I follow because of how they handle situations that go pear-shaped. Like I appreciate watching someone's character in those situations more, a lot of times as much or more than I appreciate like them actually competing. And a lot of times they go hand in hand. But but I think it's a testament to how, for me, watching how difficult it can be to find that by how few, a testament to how like few people that I watch like that, by how difficult it is for me to find people who I feel like hold up to a certain kind of standard like that, who don't get so wrapped up in the wrong stuff, the wrong things. And it's such a subjective thing. But what I mean is like putting emphasis on like winning and losing, you know, as something as small as that, as opposed to, you know, doing everything in your power and then, and being grateful. And you know, it's a fantastic exercise in character building is sport. It's as hard as it gets, actually, because and it's the whole point. Sport is just preparation for whatever the real life is. Like it's just an inconsequential way to fail. All that's going to happen is you're not going to win or something like that, right? Or you get disqualified because of some mistake, and that's it. And you know, it's just sport. But it's like, what do you want to take from that? I don't know. Everyone seems to be able to take some different things from it. Anyway, thank you. That's a really nice thing to bring up. If I'm gonna say like I aimed to uphold one particular thing, it was just in how I behaved over that period of time. It was going to be more to me in the long run, I realized, than anything else.
That's really amazing that happened to you. You could grasp that in the moment. I mean, it's really profound.
Well, you know, what was interesting was that it was like when it happened, it was this almost like a release. Like it was like this, something just left me where it was a realization in the moment that that I had completely lost control of the situation. And like, there's no point in freaking out in that situation. Like, what's that going to do? I guess that's one way to put it. But
Yeah.
like it was kind of like sit back and watch what happens. It's a great time to become an observer, right? Because it's no longer has anything to do with you, nothing to do with you. Like that's the whole point of it. It's like, this is beyond you. And so it's, yeah, and certainly, and it's an exercise in not taking yourself too seriously, I think, like really, and making sure that you all are, you know, yeah, that's such an important thing. I couldn't emphasize this element of like, of knowing why you're putting in the work, and it gives you a certain kind of armor and defense, like that purpose that Jack's talking about. It gives you a certain kind of like armor against the times when things go weird. Like it actually kind of allows you to go and turn inside and become a bit more of an observer. Like you realize that you all of a sudden you're the one that's grounded and everyone else is running around with it like a chicken with their heads cut off. And it happens. it's weird, but it, you know, I'm sure I've been on the other end of it too. I know I have, but it's one instance where I wasn't, I guess. So yeah. There's another little, I mean, shoot, I'm just talking, but there's another little story real quick that, a good little example of this. I was on a bus, World Championships. We were in Tokyo, Japan, and I was heading to finals. And there was like one bus every 45 minutes or something like that. And every single one of my competitors for the finals that night, top 8 guys, were on the same bus. So every single one of us were on the same bus. And it's Tokyo. And there's bad traffic in Tokyo in the afternoon. So we already left early, but we got stuck in traffic, and we almost didn't. It was to the point where we were realizing like we're watching our warm-up time dwindle, like minute by minute by minute, and to the point where it's like, will we make the race? And all of a sudden and this is world championships, finals in a race, but the interesting thing was every single one of us was in the same boat. It was like a great, like a little like controlled experiment kind of thing, like what's going to happen now. And you can see how people react in that situation. Like, everyone's in the same boat. Like, not one person's going to show up if one person was going to show up to the block, then it'd be like, this is kind of a drag. But none of us were going to show up to the blocks. So you can it's a great exercise in just letting things go. Letting it go. It's going to unfold however it's going to unfold, but it's treating us all the same. And that's a good analogy for like what this period is for you guys and for all of us for that matter. But we ended up swimming that night, and the relay, or the we didn't get to warm up nearly like we wanted to. None of us did. But I would say over half of that field that night had already lost before they even started the race. They had wasted so much emotional energy and wondering about what was not going to be, that they wore themselves out, and that doesn't have to be the case. Like, you don't have to go down that rabbit hole. And but it's so I go back to like, it's good to be an observer. Like, sit back, and when things start going weird, take a minute and look around. Because you might often find you don't have anything to do with it. You don't have to have anything to do with it. In fact, the world needs people who don't have anything to do with it, or who at least sit outside of it.
Amen.
Wow, so cool, so cool. Jack, are you guys? Can I have him talk about the olive trees and maybe just the energy of the moment?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a story that I related to you. This is Aaron at World Championships in Rome, and I happened to be working with Aaron at that meet. I was not his personal coach. And I guess to make the story to a little bit more profound or a little bit deeper is Aaron hadn't qualified for finals in the 100 back. And a number of days go by before he swims again. I think there were 3 or 4 days before he swam the 200 back. So you wonder what might be going on in his head. Aaron was notorious for being in the moment, where he doesn't feel like he needs to be rushed to do what he wants to do, and he doesn't he follows the beat of a different drum. And so he was almost always one of the last ones out of the warm-up, warm-down pool. So he could utilize that time to spend time alone with himself. And you saw the picture of Aaron there, but what you don't see is, if you can imagine this venue, it's a 50-meter pool, and on one end, it's almost empty. There's nothing there because the stands are horseshoe-shaped around the start end. And there are 10,000 people in the stands, and around the people in the stands are these olive trees that have been there for who knows how long. The 1960 Olympic Games were held at this venue. And these olive trees are just gorgeous. And every night, the sun starts to set behind the olive trees if you're on the turn end of the pool, the first turned end of the pool. And when you look back and you see those people, all these colorful dressed people, and all this noise going on in the stands and the sun setting behind this venue that's just accentuated with these olive trees, you're just almost breathless. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And Aaron had done a 50 pace to finish at the turn end. And I gave him his times and I started to walk away. And he called me back. He said, Jack, come back. And he climbs out of the water. And as he's climbing out of the water, I see him looking back towards the start end of the pool. And I'm going, I wonder what's going on. And as I walk towards him, he grabs two of the chairs that the officials sit in. The chairs are in disarray. They hadn't been straightened out yet. And he pulls two of them together. And he sits down and he asked me to sit down with him. And as he sits down, he crosses his legs and then he puts his arm around me. And I'm thinking, my goodness, this is like my grandfather getting ready to have a long talk with me about life. And this guy needs to get to the ready room. If he doesn't get to the ready room, I'm going to look like doo-doo as the coach. And I'm a little bit afraid of this. You know, I'm nervous. And I sit down and all of a sudden I see that Aaron is so calm that I'm calm too. And he goes, Jack, look at this. Look at this sunset. Look at these olive trees. Think about where we are. We will never experience this again. And all of a sudden, I was able to drop into that moment that Aaron had found already. And Aaron stayed there even after I left. And I must say that I was calm for a while, but as I left, I was a little bit worried. And I looked back at Aaron as I was walking away, and he's still looking up at the sunset. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure what's going to happen here. But if he gets to the ready room on time and goes to that race, there's going to be something special. And that's the race that Aaron set the world record in, that's still the world record. And that doesn't happen if you aren't that present with what's going on. Nothing special happens if you aren't in the moment. It doesn't happen.
It's easy to be that way with Jack around. He affords it.
I always feel like I'm pretty good with that until I get around to Aaron. And he teaches me lessons that I should be teaching someone half my age. And I sincerely say that. Last Sunday, an Olympic swimmer that is a Navy SEAL here asked me for a ride to the airport. And on the way to the airport, I'm taking this guy to a military airport, and he's going to Somalia. He's a Navy SEAL. It's his first deployment after being trained. And I spent a lot of time with this guy talking about life and the things that we had experienced together. And another person that has found a cause bigger than himself to give his life to. And those experiences allow me to ask myself, how fully am I living my life? And if you know people that you respect and honor based on things that they have done for you, I can't encourage you enough to sit back and ask yourself, in times like this, how are you living your life if they could watch you? And are you living it in a way that you are honoring what they've done for you? And I think about this guy I dropped off at the airport, and he's going to allow me to think about that a lot over the next 6 months. What am I doing in my life to honor this guy who is possibly sacrificing his life for me? I can't emphasize that enough. And for you, it may just be a parent that drives you to practice every day. Understanding what a coach does for you all. Live your life and honor the people that you should be honoring. I can't emphasize that enough.
Thank you guys so much. I mean, I'm willing to sit here, and I think you've got a pretty captive audience for as long as you want to keep going. But I also am respectful of your time.
Thanks, Sean. I mean, you know, you guys are very lucky to have this man on your screen, and I just happen to be here, and now it's fun for me. But you know, I think you know, if something I'm going to learn from somebody like Jack is how unfortunately unique and rare it is to find somebody that is universally, I don't know, appreciated. You know, and it's something to, if I'm going to tell you to observe it, to take from this too, and what that is. And anyway, I mean that, and I, you know, there's a lot of you guys are very lucky. I mean, there's a lot of people I know who actually turn to the gentleman that's talking to you right now, that you would love to be hearing from, probably yourselves, big names and that kind of thing. And it's a testament to being open and being vulnerable and trying to learn and grow from others. And you know, it's a lifelong process of like growing in yourselves. And again, that's kind of the vehicle of swimming that you guys are in. It's for that. It's for that. That's the way I take it.
I think that I mentioned to you all when those that were there heard me talk, that anytime I see someone that I really am impressed with, like and sometimes you just feel it. They have this quality that you want to have more of. I encourage you to seek out those relationships. I never hesitate. Like, I watched Aaron in 2004 do what he did in Athens, and I watched how he handled much of the process, especially going up to get his medal, where he was late for the ceremony because he went to find the guy that got third place when he was disqualified and then moved to fourth when he was reinstated. And at the risk of missing the ceremony to make sure that person was all right. So I see this 21-year-old guy going through that process. And I thought to myself, I didn't have the skills to do that. I would not have done that. Why does someone act that way? And wanting to be more like that, model yourself after those people. Seek them out if you can. It will just help you grow so quickly.
Truer words have not ever been spoken. Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Sean. Maybe a few questions, Sean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
you guys have any questions? Shoot.
Yeah, don't be shy, folks. You don't get this chance every day, so take advantage of it if you've got questions. I mean, you guys pop up like crazy in our own meetings, so.
Oh, that's cool. Well, I know it's a bit of like a what? You're on this thing? So yeah, you just, you know, you guys have, go ahead, shoot it.
Well, I have like a question / statement. So Aaron, you were a backstroker during the time that I was an athlete, and such an inspiration for like my entire life, and just not just your athleticism, but your just general vibe was super cool and inspiring. But you know, you had asked about reason for swimming, and I think that you have encompassed some of those aspects in just the way that you've talked tonight. But the thing that resonated with me the most was when you went to the warm down pool after you finding out that you might have gotten disqualified, and just enjoying being under the water. And that was like super special. And I think that that's something that I resonated with as an athlete, is just that stillness, that quietness of being under the water.
Right. I mean, it's like, that's what I return to always, you know, and Jack had mentioned that thank you, Austin, by the way. And Jack had mentioned that I would show up kind of late to the ready room, which I would do. And I think enough to where they actually ended up being stricter on some of the rules, thanks to me. I don't mean to, like, some weird way to toot my own horn. They actually went to a commercial break at the Olympic Games so I wouldn't miss my race one time. And then there's a longer story to that, but when it comes down to it, I didn't like the ready room, but I would just go and put my head underwater before the race, and it was calming. Like, I could just relax in that state. Why would I want to go and throw myself into a ready room with anxious people for 15 minutes? You know, I'll show up to the race on time, just, but anyway, like, to share that with you, you know, that at the end of the day, I don't know, isn't that what it's all about? You know, and I find that still in the ocean for me, or in moving water. I know you guys have a lot of moving water where you are. And so I love that. And I love the fact that we are good enough to actually explore those places. You know, like, we can do some pretty cool stuff. And I've done some pretty cool stuff outside of the pool because of the skill set that I have that you guys have. I mean, it's worth telling you a few of the things. Like, you know, I grew up with different inspirations too, just by the nature of where I grew up, I think, on the coast in Southern California. But I grew up on the coast of Southern California watching people paddle on these long boards just on their bellies and their knees for miles and miles and miles. And they cross channels all alone out there with whales. And, you know, when I was done with swimming, I decided to go, and there was only like one guy who makes paddle boards like that anymore in California, in Southern California. And I went to him and I had him make me one. And I started paddling up and down the coast. I threw a dry bag on the board and I started chasing whales, and I'd be out like 10 miles out at sea. And then lo and behold, I started finding other guys I grew up with that were influenced by the same guys, and they played water polo or swam, and we started doing that together. We had that ability. If the board got busted and broke, we could still swim in. It's okay. It's a challenge, yes, and you got to mitigate that, but you can do that, like, physically. I swam the Nepali coast in Kauai, which is like 18 miles, but you can only come ashore in 3 different places. And we did it over 3 days. We camped along the way, and we brought our supplies, and we did all that. Like, you guys, it opens up this whole world for you guys. And so it's bigger than pool swimming. And I offer that because, you know, what you guys are doing will eventually, you know, you can take it to master swimming, right? But at the level you guys are at, and I just offer those kinds of things just to kind of, like, there's other inspirations. It's incredible the kinds of things you guys can do with your ability. And anyway, yeah, I still am doing it. I'm still capable of it. So, shoot.
Like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, I know. I'm scary.
Aaron, there's a really cool article in the New York Times that I just texted Jack about the physical effects of immersion.
Oh,
Came out. It's come out over this break.
You know what? I was sent to me. Yeah. Yeah, I read that.
It's pretty cool.
I like that too.
Anna, you got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you guys both kind of talked about a lot of staying in the moment and being present. And how do you suggest, you know, in the situation we're in, staying in the moment as well as being able to be prepared to come back to competition in swimming whenever that happens.
Like right now, sorry, you mean staying in the moment as we speak?
During your time isolated at home, is that what you're talking about, Anna?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, real good question.
I mean, I could tell you how I might personally handle that. Again, like you can only stay, well, for me, I know that I would probably only be able to stay so focused on swimming if I couldn't get into pool. Like I would try, but at the same time, I would understand that eventually I will get into pool. And so right now, it's okay not to think about swimming in the same way. It might be okay to think about other interests or curiosities in my life that I usually don't have that kind of time to explore.
Like build a boat.
Like something just very outside of what you might consider, normal, and I have found that it's those things that strengthen my relationship with those things that I love. It's like it's rounding myself out. I consider it like rounding you out as a person. And
explore areas
Yeah.
that the sport doesn't allow you to explore, like read books that interest you in different subject matters. Like Aaron and I are both reading a book on a guy who built a sailboat and what he did after he built it, and went out to sea and sailed these places in Mexico that are just, this is a great time to explore just who you are as a person and what you want out of life. That you guys your schedule is so tight, you very rarely have the opportunity to do this. That will make you better at everything you do. You get to know yourself, you grow.
I would say that I would venture to say a lot of you guys are typically like really driven through routine, like just school, swimming, eat, sleep, repeat kind of thing. And routines are nice. Like you can kind of shut your brain off, Anna. You can just turn your brain off. And but eventually because you turn your brain off, if you do in that sense, you aren't as engaged on a day-to-day basis. So I think like something that's interesting about something like this, or when things kind of go weird and pear-shaped, is that it turns your brain on. Like all of a sudden you're forced to like in this situation, wonder how you're going to spend your day. Like, what do you want to do today? And not like, what's your routine today, but like, what do you want to do today and tomorrow and the next day? And it's an exercise in knowing what you like. And that's there's no other way to, what better way to be present, so to speak, in my mind, as far as that goes. And in relation to swimming, I think Jack said it really well. For me anyway, it was constantly coming back to the sense of purpose or understanding of why you swim. And if you feel like you're being like taken off in a direction you don't want to go, making sure you pull the reins in and you let it be known. This is, you take ownership of this. You can relinquish a lot in your journey, let's say, over this time, like whatever it is you do, relinquish a lot of control. And I would try to offer that within the grasp of the things you can't control. You should, like, taking ownership of why you're showing up every day, and being honest with yourself of whether you're actually enjoying it. in the way that you should or not. And because that has a direct impact on how you show up every day and how you live your life, and then also too, it teaches you the lesson of like what's okay to put work towards, and we don't want to learn to put work towards things we don't necessarily even really care about. That it's okay to be good at something even though you don't like it. I mean, it's like, that you gotta like it, but you have to constantly check in and be good to yourself. Like, we have to learn how to be good to ourselves. And one way to, is that fair enough?
Yes. What do we all run from in this day and age? And it's fear of other people's opinions. You cannot spend enough time getting to know who you are and being comfortable with that person. And it takes a long time to do, and it's hard. But I so encourage you to get to know who you are and what you stand for, and be comfortable with that.
Yeah, I would say these are the times you actually get to do that in a way where you don't have many distractions outside of it. In fact, actually, you're forced to probably do it, right? You're forced to learn how to spend time with yourselves, and what a gift. But just understanding it for what it is, as far as the way I see it, it's like, it's our job. It's all of our jobs to be comfortable with ourselves and spending time with ourselves and understanding how to keep ourselves busy and happy and engaged and motivated. And that takes work, and it's accelerated when our routines are taken away, I would say. Good question, Anna. Write in a journal.
Meditate.
Learn how to do that. And those kind of help mark that, those just stepping stones.
You guys live in one of the prettiest places in the world to get out in nature in, right? How many of you have been able to get out in nature? I miss that every day. When I lived in Colorado, I got outside as much as I could.
Garrett, you wanna hop in? You got your hand up.
So when you're in those really brutally painful sets that you feel like they're dragging on forever and you don't particularly want to do them in the moment, how do you guys focus on centering yourself so you're not even focusing on your success, but how you can keep yourself calm and make sure you're getting the best out of what you have?
Great question.
Great question, Garrett.
Man, Garrett, I don't know if I have one answer for you for that one. Kind of depends on the day. Okay. I mean, that's more of a discussion than like a direct, succinct answer,
I have recently decided that when I see someone not accomplish something that they want to accomplish, and most of the time this conversation goes on when someone finishes a swim and walks over to me as a coach. I used to have all these different questions that I tried to pull out of them to come up with a solution or an answer or a Band-Aid. And now I believe when you're unable to do something that you want to do or you fail at it, there's only two questions you need to ask yourself. One is, was I unable? And the other is, was I unwilling? And that would be where I think you should start, Garrett. Like, are you unwilling to try this because it's just too hard? Or are you unable because you don't have the tools to do it? And the unable is a part where the discussion with people that are mentors to you or adults, parents, coaches, or older friends, they can help you out with that. The unwillingness, that's a whole different discussion, right? That's where you have to dig deep into who you are as a person and start to have those conversations with your coach too. Unwilling or unable when you don't accomplish something, those are really the two things you're dealing with, nothing more. Does that help?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Garrett's one of our best question askers, and he's an awesome athlete too, but he's very contemplative
Yeah.
on the sport. Chase.
First of all, thank you so much for doing this. It was maybe one of the coolest experiences I've had in a while, honestly, or ever, for real. And I was just wondering if you had like a meditation practice you did when you're swimming, and if so, like what was it? And
Great question, Chase. Honestly, I did not personally, not something so definitive, and something I wish that I had. It wasn't. It wasn't as it wasn't like around in the same way then, and I mean that in the sense of it was never really offered in a way, or never really presented itself. And that being said, I did since I didn't intentionally necessarily do that, I unintentionally would. And so much of what it is for me, let's see, is being able to watch. Talking about observing, like literally being able to observe and watch where your mind goes in practice, especially when things get tough. And instead of just kind of giving in or giving way to that, or going down that rabbit hole of maybe negative places our mind can go, to let those thoughts go, to learn to let those thoughts go. And, that's hard, because that does take presence and awareness, to not just kind of like go down the rabbit hole of like, oh, I'm so mad at my coach for giving me this set. I'm going to give him, like, I'm so mad at Billy next to me who's going fast, even on a set we're not supposed to go fast on, and now everyone has to go fast.
Unwilling.
Right.
Not unable, unwilling.
Right. When are you unwilling? Right. And there's a difference there. And so I would that's where I would try to catch myself. That's really what meditation kind of centers around, is kind of being an observer of your mind. And right, I mean, and it
For sure.
and what a great way to do that when your mind and your body are completely stressed. But that's great, Chase. I hope you kind of I hope you are, maybe you already are if you're asking that question, but continue to discover that. That's a very mature way of approaching it. It goes down to every little, because it goes right into like when you're nervous, watching your mind before a race do its own little dance, but not going there, not letting it wear you out physically, which is what nerves and anxiety can do. Literally take you out of a race before it even began. I think that it's literally learning how to step out of your own way.
Space between thoughts. If you don't have enough space when you're thinking about things in a pressure situation, that causes constriction, and you just dance this circle when your mind constricts and you're feeling pressure and nothing's resolved at all. It creates confusion. How do you expand that into allowing thought to be in a place where you can really think about what you're thinking about? It's not controlling you. Are your thoughts constricted? Are they expanded? And that's the way I best catch myself when I feel pressure. And sometimes I can control it and sometimes I can't. And I think that's true for everyone. But the more you practice a mindful practice, the more likely you are to be able to to identify that and change it. It takes a lot of hard work. It does. We don't live in a place where we can drop into direct perception very easily. And it's something we're learning, but we're behind a lot of other cultures in that respect.
Great question, Chase.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Jacob, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, what aspect of life would you say that swimming has the greatest impact on?
I think I got that question, and if I didn't, write it on because because I couldn't really hear it that well. But I think it was what swimmer had the biggest impact on me?
I'm not sure. Sean, did you hear it?
I think
I don't know if that's what he said, but let's write that out because I want to know the answer to the question.
Oh, okay.
He can put it in the chat and we can take a look at it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Ooh, as I don't know how to answer that. Good. Okay. Well, I put myself in a little pickle there. So if there was a swimmer who had the biggest impact on me, so it's totally. I would venture to say it was very dependent on time in my career. But shoot. Oh gosh. Okay. I think. I gotta think about that. Let me think about that, and before the call is over,
okay.
I'm gonna let you know.
All right, Xavier, you want to hop in?
Yeah. Is it okay if I ask 2 questions?
Oh, I see. I see Jacob's question now. I think.
Okay.
Yeah. What aspect of life does swimming have the greatest impact on? What aspect of life? Cool. Good question. Great question.
Yeah, it is.
Great question. I think it's swimming is just like you could say this in like about sport in general. I think it's about something you're putting this much time into. I think for me. I think looking back on it, it's how we react to situations out of our control. And it's how we learn to, let's see, put this in a way, to really kind of learn how to lean on and love each other as much as anything within the sport. Like it's a very individual sport, but you don't want to go through this alone. Like you just don't. None of us do. So I think it's learning how to open yourselves up as best you can and learn from each other and be there for each other when and things become difficult. It's
vulnerability, right?
Vulnerability, I think is one for sure. That's a good one. I'm still thinking about your question, that other one, Sean. So I'll let you know.
That's all right. Xavier.
All right. So can I ask 2 kind of similar questions?
Sure.
All right. So, you hear a lot of these big swimmers talk about compartmentalization between like 3 races at a meet. How do you stay in the moment when you know that you had a race before you and you have like 2 races ahead of you and you kind of have, for me, like I'm kind of forcing myself to think about all that because it's just so much. How do you really stay in the moment in that sense?
Sure. It's an exercise, again, like all of it, right? And real easy, I would say, to be thinking about other events, either how the last one went or how the ones ahead are going to go. I think it goes back to that point of Jack's, the unwilling versus unable one. And if you're unable to finish a race or do a race like you want. And there's nothing you can do about that in the moment. Like it's okay. And accepting that is part of, I think, the process of growth in the sport, and acknowledging what you can go back to and work on if possible. I think it's common sense to say if you stay in the present moment, right? It's like that race will be, you'll make the most of it. Instead of focusing on the hurt and the pain you're going to feel in the third or fourth race of the day. Like, that's hard. And it's easier said than done. So there is no, like, it's an exercise, and it's a practice. It's a habit of being like, worrying about those races is not going to help me with this race. It's just, and not just saying it, but learning to believe it, like learning to understand that, and embrace that, like, this is what you've got coming, and not be afraid of it. And what are you afraid of? Like, really kind of digging in and being like, what are you worried about? Are you thinking about the last race and how poorly you might have done? And what does that mean? Or how you're going to do at the end of the day. It's kind of like, what are you trying to get out of it? What are you afraid of? Are you afraid of just the physical hurt, or of not living up to a certain expectation? Like, those kinds of questions can be difficult to answer, and maybe depends on the day. But I think that's part of, like, our work in the sport.
And to some degree, when you talk about the busyness of the meet with all the challenges that you're going to have before you, it really is about mental toughness. And mental toughness it's a trainable ability. Some people are born with it and they have it a little bit more than others, but you can train mental toughness. And I do know that when I spoke to you all as a group, I talked about mental toughness, and the best definition I know for that is, what's the next most important thing? And let's just say you have a bad race on the first race. None of that matters. That's a discussion you can have with Sean long after the meet's over. But how do you prepare yourself to get ready for that next thing? And we celebrate that in sport. We see people bring people a comeback that just looks impossible that happens. And that's somebody who doesn't focus in on the past at all. It's the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And maintaining optimism as you go to that next thing. You will never reach full potential if you aren't optimistic. I've never met an Olympian that wasn't optimistic. It doesn't happen. And pessimism and optimism are something you are totally in your control. That's negative mind, positive mind, and just knowing that you've got all the tools you need to move from that vine that you're comfortable swinging on to that other vine that you need to get to that may break. So what if it breaks? You've got the tools to figure that out. And that's a little bit elaborate to the question you asked, but I do believe that's the way that you approach multiple tasks that you're faced with.
Xavier, you got a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm just trying to take that in still. That was pretty incredible. But so kind of going on the same kind of vein of that, how do you balance, your long-term goals with staying in the moment? Like, especially like at the start of the season right now, like we're going to have meets in the future, but right now it's just really hard. I mean, for me, it's kind of hard to stay in the moment when I'm just really anxious, or not anxious, but wanting to swim, wanting to compete, wanting to do all this. How do you balance those two?
Great question. Well, okay. Maybe you should go first this time.
I guess when I hear a question like that, Xavier, I guess I ask myself this, like, well, first of all, I will tell you I was a terrible competitor because I always got in my way. I always got in my way. And I'll never forget one person looking at me before I got ready to compete and going, when are you going to stop worrying about what might happen? And I thought, this guy knows me better than I know myself. And that's what happened. We are afraid of other people's opinions. I'm going back to, I will repeat myself and repeat myself and repeat myself, because the issues that we deal with as athletes, they're the same thing you're going to deal with as an adult if you don't come to terms with it. And I just, I can't get beyond that. I believe that you possess all the tools you need to reach your full potential. Sean cannot give those to you. You already have them. He can help you ask questions that you need to ask yourself in order to come to terms with those. But you have every single tool you need to reach your full potential. No one else can give you that. And the other part of it is, I think, confidence, right? If you think about what confidence is, no one else can give you that either. Only you can give yourself confidence. And how do you do that? You do that by doing things special, either in practice or life, and take the focus off of you. When Aaron set me down in Rome and we started looking at the sunset, that was in fact dropping into direct perception. I knew at that point there's no way he was going to perform any better under any circumstance, regardless of what happened in the past or what he was thinking about going forward. He was where he needed to be, and that's a trained mind. That's a trained mind due to confidence. He had done what he needed to do in practice to know what he was capable of doing. And we had a conversation after that race, like, you know, he wasn't allowed to go anywhere and have a meal and celebrate with family. He had to go back to a hotel room, and there were team policies. And we sat in the hallway and we talked about that event for a couple of hours almost. You know, he had the confidence to do what he needed to do and wanted to do. And it unfolds the right way. I don't know that you had a specific time you wanted to hit.
That's actually a great segue to Xavier's, to that question, Xavier, because it's like, it's balancing the here and now with that far out goals. Part of it is understanding, having a keen understanding of what's in and out of your control. Most things are out of your control. The outcome of that goal in the future is out of your control for the most part, especially years, months, weeks out in advance. And what I mean by that is those goals are made up by the little steps day to day. That's just the process. Like those don't, you know, you set some goal out in the future and it's impossible to connect the dots looking forward. You can't. And it's easy to connect them looking back. But it's a matter of understanding that in order to accomplish that goal, one of your tasks is to remain present. Like that's one of your actual tasks in practice, is learning how to, or in a day-to-day life, how to take care of what you need to take care of today, so that you can take care of what you need to take care of tomorrow, so that 1 or 2 or months from now or years from now, that all of that adds up. And you occasionally check in with yourself about how your progress is coming. And that's good and easy with such an objective sport like swimming and seeing your times. But I think that's the point, is to not get distracted with the big end goal. And my biggest goal was to be consistent. Like if you want to know what my goal was, it was so vague and opaque. And people were like, what do you know what time you want to go in this race? And I'm like, don't ask me that question. Hate that question. I hated that question. what time do I want to go in this race? How would I know what time I'm going to exactly go? I have an idea of what I'd be happy with, of what, like, this range of what I'm capable of. And that's enough. And it's all a matter of chipping away at what my potentiality is. And you're trying to reach your potential, and the only way to do that is to be as present as you can every single day. And that takes practice. And again, swimming is not, it seems like such a physical thing, and it is, but that's not also what you're training. You're training your mind, like 80% of what it is. And that's what it is, in my opinion. Hopefully that answers your question, Xavier. It's a great question. That's another discussion, not so much like a question and answer kind of one. One of the great journeys of the sport is that question.
Aaron, I'm going to rephrase mine, and maybe maybe we wrap up here. We've been doing a lot of stuff on these calls where we talk about, share a moment that you were like happy to be involved with a teammate's success, or things like that, where we're really talking about being connected and supporting each other. Yeah. So if I could reframe the misinterpreted question to, is there a moment or a piece of advice that you got from another athlete that was really helpful to you along the way, versus just what one person impacted you? Like, can you think of a moment that you would be willing to share about how a teammate had a really profound or positive impact on your career, or you as a person, maybe at a dark time or something like that?
That's a great question, Sean. And I do have an answer for the previous one, but it's no one you would know. And it's from somebody I swam with from when I was like 10 to 15.
Okay.
And
he helped you come to practice when you were learning about the sport, huh?
He was my friend, and he was my biggest competitor. And learning how to have an equilibrium in both. And it's just such a lovely, like, innocent time in that sense. But we both learned that from each other. And I would say that that's a great question too. If something was ever offered to me, something comes to mind. Nothing said. I won't say it was anything said. It was simply a presence. And it was a really good friend of mine. And then growing up, that every time I showed up, we were able to just smile together, just actually like enjoy each other's company, and be ourselves, and be completely ridiculous and free in a sense. And so there were a lot of great conversations within that, but really it was just being able to open up and be grateful for having other people there. I know that nice things were said to me at times. Jack's one of those, for sure. Jack, one of my favorite photos of my entire life, actually. And it was kind of our first introduction, almost to some degree, to each other. Of a very special moment at Olympic Games that normally would seem like kind of creepy. It's like, what are you taking a picture of us like that for? But by the nature of what it was anything but. It was just a beautiful moment captured in time. And what it was for me was it was like the gift of presence, I guess. It really is probably what it comes down to too. Shoot, Sean, great question. I could spend all night ruminating on that one too. That's good. Great question, guys.
Thanks. I I appreciate y'all's time so much. I mean, we're almost 2 hours into this, and your patience to answer all of our questions. But I think we're good. I mean, you guys have been so generous. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. You guys got any parting words, either one of you?
You know, we were asked the other day if we had mantras by one of the swimmers. And I said I didn't, but I do. And it's something that I say all the time to people, and it's hold fast and stay true. And that's an old maritime phrase that when ships were made of wood and men and women were made of steel, and they'd get out in rough waters and the bow was being overflowed by a big wave, and they would look at each other and they would go, hold fast, hold fast. And that meant to look for things on the boat that had weathered tough storms. Hold fast to things that you believe in, things that you know will get you where you want to go, and they're going to be concrete and they're going to be there all the time. And then the other part of the phrase was stay true. And they'd yell, stay true to each other. And that was to remember why you're on the journey to begin with. Don't lose face or track of why you're doing what you're doing when things get hard. Stay true to what you're doing and why you're doing it. So hold fast and stay true.
Great.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. No. Let me think of this. Give me a second, Sean. Let's see. Oh shoot.
I want to hear from these guys.
Do they have a question?
No, they've cracked me up the whole time. I want to hear from Sawyer, Andy, Noah, and whoever else is in this picture. They've cracked me up.
Andy and Noah.
They've cracked me up this whole talk. Hey, dude.
That's like five of the senior guys that apparently are quarantining together.
Love it.
I do too.
They deserve it.
They embrace life.
That's good. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you guys very, very, very insightful, and you know, you guys will all be back in the water soon. So enjoy the time that you guys have like this for now, because it's probably itself and coming around like this very often. Make the most, as hard as it is, you know. So
yeah. Well, you guys enjoy your time. I mean, you're what, 9 weeks in on this? Almost got a new boat.
Yeah, we're roommates now.
It's. I mean, you've got the same, you know, this window of opportunity. I know you get to spend some time together, but this is like also probably a unique thing.
This is a funny story. I live in a neighborhood that's really a very close neighborhood, but people don't necessarily know each other. It's not small, but it's not large, and it's composed of doctors because the hospital system is a couple of blocks away, or pilots because one of the biggest naval air stations is a few blocks away. And so we all see each other, but we don't know each other. We're really pretty busy. And I'm walking my dogs this morning, and a lady comes up to me and goes, "Is your son the swim coach?" Meaning they've seen Aaron with me so much now, they think he's my son. And I looked at them and I just went, yes. I didn't even know how to deal with that question.
There's a lot to that question.
I'm going, holy smokes, I don't know you. How do you know me?
All right.
Right.
So
Cool.
That's where we are in this community.
Cool. Well, look, you guys take care. This was awesome. Very much appreciated from the entire Hilltopper family.
Hey, Sean, I greatly appreciate who you are and the way you treat our craft. You've been a big influence on me from the time I met you till now, and greatly appreciate your friendship.
And I reciprocate it. Absolutely, Jack. Absolutely. All right. You guys have a wonderful night.
You too, guys.
Thank you. Thank
so
you
much.
guys so much.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you.
Happy Hanukkah.
We gotta leave.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.